What if the prophet you were never meant to know was the very one who unlocked the greatest secret of heaven and earth? What if his words were so dangerous that both the church and the mosque tried to bury them in silence? This is not a legend. This is not myth. This is Enoch, or as Islam remembers him, Idris, a man who walked with angels, a man who tasted death, and yet stepped into paradise alive. A man whose story was cut from the Bible, hidden beneath centuries of fear, politics, and empire. The Book of Enoch speaks of watchers who fell from the sky of forbidden unions that gave birth to giants of secret knowledge. Sorcery, weaponry, astrology poured into the hands of mankind before we were ready. It was a story too raw, too disruptive, too true. So the councils called it heresy. The Vatican buried it, and the world forgot. But Islam never forgot. In the Quran, he is Idris, a man of truth, a prophet raised to a high station. And in that high station lies a mystery so profound it could change the way you see both the Bible and the Quran forever. Stay with me, because once you hear this story, you will never see faith or the world the same way again. Now let's begin. Why was the Book of Enoch banned? Chapter 1, The Forbidden Truth. They told us the Bible was complete. They told us the canon was closed, neat, and perfect. 66 books, nothing more, nothing less. But what if I told you that there was once another book, a book so powerful, so disturbing that it was deliberately cut out, and its name is still whispered today with fear, the Book of Enoch? Why would entire councils of bishops, entire schools of scholars, entire empires unite to bury one prophet's voice? It wasn't because Enoch was false. No, it was because he was dangerous. Enoch's writings describe a reality that shakes the very foundations of theology. He dared to write of angels who broke their boundaries, who descended from the heavens not as messengers but as rebels. These beings, known as the Watchers, crossed the forbidden line between the divine and the human, and in doing so they shattered the order of creation itself. From these unions came children unlike any the world had seen, not angels, not men, but something in between, beings of colossal size, monstrous strength, and insatiable hunger. The Nephilim, giants who devoured the earth, consuming everything in their path, not only food, but humanity itself. It accuses these fallen ones of handing forbidden knowledge to mankind, secrets of war, of enchantments, of astrology, of metallurgy, and weapons. They gave tools of destruction to people who were not ready to hold such power. And once mankind touched this fire, the world began to burn. If this story were true, then human civilization did not simply evolve through its own genius. Our sciences, our weapons, our very culture may have been seeded by beings who were never meant to walk among us. This story is not unique to Enoch. You find its shadows in Genesis 6. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives of them. You see it echoed in ancient Mesopotamian myths of gods descending to mix with mortals. You even find whispers in the Quran's warnings about those who taught mankind sorcery and secrets forbidden. Enoch gathers all those whispers and speaks them loudly, without hesitation, without compromise. And that is exactly why his book had to be silenced. The church councils, centuries later, they are trying to unify doctrine to bring order to prevent heresy. A text like Enoch is far too wild, too apocalyptic, too uncontrollable. It suggests that angels can rebel, that heaven is not as untouchable as they preached, and that humanity is caught in a cosmic war stretching from the highest heaven to the depths of the abyss. So they banned it, not because it was false, but because it was dangerous. Dangerous to power, dangerous to empire, dangerous because it spoke a truth no throne on earth wanted the people to hear. Why would the New Testament itself quote directly from Enoch if it were worthless? In Jude 1:14-15, you find the words almost line for line, Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment on all and to convict all the ungodly of their deeds. Jude is not making this up. He is quoting Enoch. The early church fathers read Enoch. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church preserved it. And in the Islamic tradition, Idris, the very same figure as Enoch, is praised in the Quran as a man of truth, a prophet raised to a high station. The voice of Enoch never fully vanished. It kept resurfacing like a river forced underground but bursting out again through cracks in the earth. What was it about Enoch that was so threatening? Enoch told us that the world we live in is not safe. It is not neutral. Behind kingdoms and empires, behind culture and science, there are other hands that do not belong to God or to man, but to beings who rebelled against both. That is a dangerous idea, because it means history is not just human. It means power is not just political. It means the corruption of mankind is not merely sin, it is invasion. Enoch reveals a war that began long before the first empires, a war that unfolded in secret, spilling from heaven onto earth. Angels once radiant with light turned into shadows of desire. Men once innocent became apprentices of forbidden fire. And women became the womb of a hybrid race that almost destroyed creation itself. This was not allegory. This was not symbolism. This was Enoch's testimony preserved because he saw it, because he lived it, because he walked with God, while the world around him spiraled into chaos. And so when councils centuries later sat to decide what books would remain in the canon, the Book of Enoch was too much, too revealing, too close to secrets that empires preferred to erase. Think about our world today. Technology that we cannot control, knowledge advancing faster than our morality, wars fueled by weapons that can wipe out nations. Doesn't it feel familiar? Doesn't it echo the warnings of Enoch? Maybe the forbidden truth is not just ancient. Maybe it is timeless. Enoch's testimony stands as a mirror that shows us what happens when mankind takes knowledge not meant for him. A mirror that reflects a history we were never meant to remember but cannot afford to forget. That is why it was banned, not because it was false, but because it was true, too true. And truth, when it is dangerous, always threatens empire. So here at the very beginning of our journey, we are faced with a question. If one prophet's writings were so powerful that they had to be hidden, what else has been buried? What else have we been told to forget? The Book of Enoch is not just an ancient curiosity. It is a key that unlocks the story of the Watchers, the Nephilim, and the cosmic battle that shaped both the Bible and the Quran. Stay with me, because the next chapter will open the door to those forbidden beings themselves, the Watchers who crossed heaven's line, and the giants who shook the earth. Chapter 2. The Watchers and the Giants. If Chapter 1 revealed why the Book of Enoch was banned, then Chapter 2 reveals the reason why its pages still burn with controversy. For here the forbidden story begins to unfold in all its terror. A story of angels who became more than messengers. A story of giants who were more than myth. A story that turned heaven's rebellion into humanity's nightmare. The text says, "And it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days daughters were born to them beautiful and fair. And the angels, the sons of heaven, saw them and desired them, saying, Let us choose wives from among the daughters of men and beget children. These angels were called the Watchers. Their role was not to descend. Their command was not to interfere. They were placed as guardians of the order of creation, witnesses of heaven's harmony. Yet desire burned within them, and desire turned them into rebels. 200 of them, led by a chief named Semjaza, swore an oath upon the summit of Mount Hermon. They bound themselves by curses, promising not to abandon their plan, but to carry it out together. The oath was sealed, and the descent began. These were not demons from the underworld. These were angels, beings of light, watchers of God's throne. They chose corruption. They chose to fall. And in their fall, they dragged humanity into an age of terror. Each of these watchers took wives from the daughters of men. They lay with them, and from this forbidden union came children of unimaginable size, giants, colossal beings, not human, not angel, but something in between, the Nephilim. For centuries, mainstream religion has tried to tame this story. Some say sons of God simply means human rulers. Others call it symbolic. But Enoch does not veil his words. He does not soften the truth. He insists these were heavenly beings who broke heaven's law, and their children were real. The Nephilim walked the earth. They were taller than houses, stronger than armies. They consumed more food than villages could provide. And when there was no more grain, no more cattle, no more harvest, they turned their hunger upon humanity itself. They devoured mankind. These weren't myths. They walked the earth. Archaeologists have unearthed megalithic structures that baffle explanation, stones weighing hundreds of tons carved with impossible precision, erected in times when mankind supposedly possessed only primitive tools. Could these be silent witnesses of an age of giants? Could these stones remember builders who were not fully human? Cultures across the globe speak of them. The Sumerians had tales of Anunnaki who descended from the heavens. The Greeks spoke of titans. The Native Americans tell of great giants with voracious appetites. The Bible itself, in Numbers 13:33, records the spies of Israel saying, "We saw the Nephilim there, and we seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." The Watchers brought with them knowledge secrets not meant for mankind. Azazel, one of their leaders, taught men to fashion swords, knives, shields, and armor. War was born. Semjaza taught enchantments, charms, and the cutting of roots. Magic was born. Barakiel taught astrology. Kokabel revealed constellations. Ezekiel unveiled the knowledge of the clouds. Shamshiel revealed the signs of the sun, and Sariel taught the course of the moon. They handed the keys of heaven to those still crawling in the dust of the earth. And man, intoxicated by this knowledge, forgot the boundary between wisdom and destruction. Humanity did not invent sorcery. It was taught. Humanity did not invent weapons of war. They were given. Humanity did not discover astrology alone. It was revealed by rebels. The Watchers were not just fallen angels. They were teachers of corruption. And the Nephilim were not just giants. They were the violent fruit of a union never meant to exist. Together they turned the earth into chaos. And when humanity cried out, when blood soaked the ground, the cries rose to heaven. The angels above the faithful ones, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, looked down and saw the devastation. They heard the screams of men devoured by giants, the sorrow of women enslaved by rebels, the ruin of creation. And they carried their complaint to the throne of the Most High. Can you imagine this scene? The very angels who once watched mankind from above now rushing to God's presence in horror. The earth cries out with the blood of men. All lawlessness has spread. The Watchers have broken your order. The Nephilim ravage creation. What shall be done? Heaven trembles. The stars themselves shudder, for the harmony of creation is shattered. This is no children's tale. This is no metaphor. The Book of Enoch insists it happened, and if it happened once, the question remains, could it happen again? Some skeptics dismiss it as legend, yet ask yourself, why would a legend be banned from the Bible? Why would a fairy tale be quoted in the New Testament? Why would Ethiopian Christians risk their lives to preserve it for centuries if it was only myth? The uncomfortable truth is that Enoch's story does not sound like fiction. It sounds like memory, and memory is dangerous, because it reminds us that giants once roamed the earth, that mankind once served as students of forbidden masters, that the corruption of the Watchers nearly tore creation apart. The danger was not only physical, it was spiritual. When men bowed to the Watchers for knowledge, they exchanged the worship of the Creator for the worship of the corrupt. When women bore the Nephilim, humanity's bloodline itself was altered. When sorcery replaced faith, when astrology replaced trust in the Creator, when weapons replaced innocence, the world had reached the brink of annihilation. Enoch writes it with chilling clarity, and as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. For just as then, so now mankind is again tempted by knowledge without wisdom, by power without restraint. We build weapons that can end nations. We manipulate genetics. We reach into the heavens with technology. But behind the hunger for progress may still lurk the same ancient whisper, the same forbidden teaching. The story of the Watchers is not merely history, it is a warning. And this is why the Book of Enoch unsettled empires. Because it dares to say that the corruption of humanity is not merely a human problem. It is not simply sin weakness or error. It is invasion. It is intrusion. It is a cosmic war waged by beings who cross the line between heaven and earth. If this were true, then no empire, no council, no throne of men could claim full authority, because mankind was never the only player in the drama of history. Giants walked the earth. Angels descended. Forbidden knowledge was poured out. What became of the Watchers and their monstrous children? Did they vanish into legend? Were they destroyed? Or do traces of their legacy still haunt our world today? It tells us of divine judgment of a flood sent to cleanse creation of angels bound in chains beneath the earth awaiting their final punishment. But before we reach that story, we must pause to see the man at the center of it all. For while the Watchers fell, one man stood. While the Nephilim devoured, one man walked with God. While the world drowned in blood, one prophet was raised to a high station. That man is Enoch, or as the Quran names him, Idris, and it is to him, the prophet of knowledge, of devotion, of mystery, that we turn next. Chapter 3. Enoch becomes Idris. We have seen the Watchers descend and the giants devour. We have witnessed forbidden knowledge unleashed upon the earth. But now let us shift the lens. In the midst of this chaos, one man stood apart. One man who did not fall into corruption, who did not bow to the Watchers, who did not hunger for forbidden fire. That man was Enoch. Yet to billions across the world today, he is remembered by another name, Idris. The Bible tells us briefly of Enoch. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. A simple line, but behind it hides a mystery deeper than most chapters of Scripture. Who was this man who vanished without death? Who was this prophet who walked so closely with the Almighty that he bypassed the grave? The Quran answers with clarity. In Surah Maryam, verse 56, it declares, and mentioned in the book Idris, indeed he was a man of truth and a prophet, and we raised him to a high station. Raised to a high station. What does that mean? A metaphor for honor, a symbol of dignity, or something far more literal? Islamic tradition paints Idris not only as a prophet, but as a scholar. He is remembered as the first to hold a pen, the first to inscribe words onto parchment. Imagine it, humanity's first written letters carved in ink, a leap from oral tradition into recorded history. While others learned sorcery from the Watchers, Idris preserved wisdom in the purity of writing. He is called the father of astronomy, the one who studied the heavens not for astrology, but for knowledge. He mapped the stars, charted their courses, and sought meaning not in enchantments, but in divine order. While fallen angels corrupted creation, Idris sought to understand it. He is also called the father of tailoring. He was the first to sew garments from cloth. While the Watchers taught humanity how to adorn themselves with vanity and jewelry, Idris clothed humanity with dignity. Every thread, every stitch whispered worship, Subhanallah, glory be to God. Scholar, sage, scientist, prophet. Idris was more than just a holy man. He was the antidote to the corruption around him. A world torn apart by giants, by chaos, by forbidden knowledge. And in that world, one man sits beneath the night sky, ink upon parchment, studying the constellations, stitching garments by candlelight, whispering praises to the Creator. Is it any wonder that God raised him, but raised him where the Quran says, we raised him to a high station? Scholars have debated this phrase for centuries. Some say Idris was lifted into the fourth heaven. Others claim the sixth. Still others believe he entered paradise itself. A hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari records the Prophet Muhammad's journey of the night ascension, the Miraj. On that journey he met Idris in the fourth heaven. Think of that centuries after Enoch walked the earth, Muhammad himself testifies to meeting Idris alive in the heavens. Not a memory, not a ghost, but a prophet still preserved. And some scholars go further. They say Idris never tasted death. Just as the Bible hints that Enoch was taken, so the Quranic tradition suggests Idris ascended alive. He entered the realm beyond, not by dying but by walking through the door that few men will ever see. Some scholars believe he entered paradise alive. If true, Idris did not simply vanish. He became one of the rare men in history to cross into eternity without the sting of death. Alongside Elijah, who was taken up in a whirlwind, Idris stands as a testimony that for those who walk closely with God, even the final enemy can be bypassed. His presence in heaven becomes a living witness. He is not only a prophet of the past, he is part of the unseen reality of the present. When the faithful speak of the prophets in the heavens, Idris is among them, watching, waiting, preserved until the decree of the Most High is complete. The watchers descended from heaven and corrupted the earth. Idris ascended from earth and was raised to heaven. The watchers fell because of desire. Idris rose because of devotion. The watchers unleashed forbidden knowledge. Idris preserved divine wisdom. The watchers fathered giants. Idris became the father of scholars. In every generation of darkness, God preserves a light. When giants walk the earth, a prophet still walks with God. Idris was not remembered simply as a mystic lost in visions. He worked, he wrote, he studied, he sowed. His worship was not only in prayers but in the craft of his hands. He showed that holiness is not escape from the world but transforming it. While others tore the earth apart, he built. While others glorified violence, he glorified God in simplicity. Tradition says that even Azrael, the angel of death, desired to walk beside Idris, so moved was he by Idris's purity. We will return to that story later, for it hides one of the most astonishing moments in all prophetic history. Idris is not a myth. He is not a symbol. He is a prophet recognized in both Bible and Quran, honored across two of the world's greatest faiths. His writings shaped Jewish apocalyptic thought. His ascension shook Christian theology. His presence in the Quran confirms his truth in Islam. He is a bridge between traditions, a prophet who refuses to be forgotten. And so we are left with a question that echoes across centuries. If Idris entered paradise alive, what does that mean for us? Does it mean that mankind was never meant for death? Does it mean that closeness to God can break even the chains of mortality? Does it mean that the story of salvation is not simply about escaping hell, but about entering heaven even while still alive? The story of Idris challenges everything we think we know. It dares us to believe that man can transcend, that a mortal can wear immortality, that a prophet can walk so closely with God that heaven itself opens. So now the narrative stands at a crossroads. On one side, the watchers fallen and chained. On the other, Idris lifted and preserved. Two destinies, two outcomes, two revelations. And between them lies the judgment of God. If angels cannot fall in Islam, who were these watchers? If Idris is preserved in heaven, who were the rebels cast into chains? That is where we turn next. For to understand Idris fully, we must uncover the Islamic answer to one of the most controversial mysteries of all time. If angels cannot rebel, then what truly happened in those ancient days? Stay with me. The story is only just beginning. Chapter 4. Angels or Jinn? We now stand at one of the sharpest crossroads in this story. For everything we have heard about the Watchers, about angels descending, about Nephilim being born, all of it collides with a bold claim from Islam. The Quran, unlike the Book of Enoch, does not say that angels fell. In fact, it insists on the opposite. Angels in Islam cannot fall. They cannot rebel. they cannot sin. This revelation shatters the narrative we have been building, because if angels are beings of light created only to obey Allah without hesitation, then the watchers described in Enoch could not have been angels at all. Maybe the fallen angels were never angels at all. Angels are created from pure light. They have no lust, no ego, no rebellion. They do only what Allah commands. When they bow fully. When they worship without distraction. They do not eat. They do not marry. They do not transgress. So if angels cannot fall, who then were the beings that descended to earth, took human wives and fathered the giants? The answer lies in another creation, the jinn. Long before mankind walked the earth, before Adam's feet touched the soil of Eden, another race already lived. The Quran tells us, and the jinn we created before from smokeless fire. Quran 15:27. The jinn are not angels. They are not human. They are something in between free-willed creatures of fire. Like humans, they can believe or disbelieve. Like humans, they can obey or rebel. And among them, just as among us, are prophets and devils, saints and sinners. And the most infamous of them all is Iblis. When Allah commanded the angels to bow before Adam, they bowed without hesitation. But Iblis refused. The Quran clarifies he was of the jinn and he disobeyed the command of his Lord. Quran 18:50. The one Christians call Satan was not a fallen angel. He was never an angel. He was jinn. Reading the Book of Enoch through this lens, suddenly the picture changes. The so-called fallen angels may not have been angels at all, but rebellious jinn masquerading as divine. They descended to earth not from heaven's throne, but from the unseen realm of fire, and in their rebellion they corrupted mankind. The watchers may not have been watchers at all. They may have been jinn. But what of the Nephilim? Those strange hybrids, half human, half otherworldly giants of strength and destruction. Here too, Islamic tradition offers haunting possibilities. Folklore speaks of strange beings known as Nazarene, creatures said to be half human and half jinn. Misshapen, incomplete, deformed, as though nature itself could not bear the weight of such unnatural unions. The Nazarenes lurch in the margins of Islamic tales, reminders of boundaries crossed, of lines blurred. Could the Nazarenes be distant echoes of the Nephilim? Could the giants of Genesis and the grotesque hybrids of Islamic folklore be two versions of the same memory? For centuries, many have accused religion of fabricating myths. But what if it is not myth at all? What if different traditions are telling the same forbidden story in different languages? Enoch calls them fallen angels. Islam calls them rebellious jinn. The result is the same, a race of hybrids born of forbidden unions, a corruption so deep that the world itself cried out for cleansing. And in that realization, two faiths meet. If angels cannot fall, the purity of heaven is preserved. The throne of God is never tainted by rebellion. Yet the corruption of the earth is still explained not through angels breaking their essence, but through jinn beings designed with free will abusing that freedom. This is not contradiction, it is completion. Enoch saw rebels descend. Islam clarifies their nature. Both describe the same crisis, a crisis that demanded divine judgment. If the watchers were jinn, then humanity's story is not simply a tale of angelic rebellion. It is a tale of spiritual deception. For when these jinn appeared clothed in glory, bearing forbidden knowledge, mankind believed them divine. Men bowed, women were enticed, and entire generations were led astray, thinking they were following messengers of heaven, when in fact they were embracing rebels of fire, evil disguised as divine light. And so the Book of Enoch's warning collides perfectly with the Quran's wisdom. Humanity's greatest threat has never been brute force alone. It has always been deception. The whisperer, the tempter, the one who takes on the form of light to lead us into darkness. The Nephilim then were not accidents of biology. They were weapons of corruption. Their very existence mocked the order of creation. Neither angel nor man, neither fire nor flesh, they were distortions. And distortions always destroy. Think of our age, hybrid experiments, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence blurring human boundaries, knowledge advancing faster than morality. Are we not again dancing on the edge of forbidden unions? Is history repeating itself? Is mankind once more being enticed by whispers that promise power, knowledge, transcendence, but deliver only corruption? The Book of Enoch and the Quran together thunder the same warning: beware of knowledge that does not come from God. Beware of gifts that corrupt the soul. Beware of unions that violate divine order. Some may dismiss the idea of jinn as superstition, but across cultures, across centuries, humanity has remembered them. From the Ifrit of Arabian tales to the jinn of Persian legends to the spirits that whisper in African traditions, the memory persists. Always fiery, always cunning, always close enough to touch, yet hidden enough to deny. And if they truly are the ones behind the story of the Watchers, then the truth is even more unsettling: mankind has never been alone. From the beginning, another race has watched, whispered, and sought to shape our destiny. So the question is no longer, did angels fall? The question is, how much of human history has been bent by the will of jinn? When we look back at the Nephilim, we are not staring at myth. We are staring at evidence of a war older than nations. A war between obedience and rebellion, between light and fire, between prophets who rose and creatures who descended. It means that Enoch's visions and Islam's revelations are not two competing stories, but two sides of one greater truth. The fallen angels may never have been angels at all. They were jinn, and their legacy is not dead. If rebellious jinn once walked among men, openly fathering giants, distorting creation, spreading forbidden knowledge, what prevents them from whispering still? What prevents them from shaping our age, not through giants, but through ideas, not through brute force, but through deception that cloaks itself in light? Maybe the story of the Watchers is not just history. Maybe it is prophecy. For if jinn were the ones behind the chaos, if they corrupted mankind to such a degree that the world cried out, then we must now confront the divine response. The flood, the waters that swept away the giants, the judgment that silenced the hybrids, the cleansing that reset creation. Stay with me, for in the next chapter we will see how heaven responded to this unholy union and why a flood became the only way to save the earth. Chapter 5. The Great Flood. A Divine Reset. The story of the Watchers and the Nephilim builds to a breaking point. Humanity is corrupted. The earth is consumed. The cries of the innocent rise like smoke to the heavens. And then, the sky itself opens. The Great Flood. Most of us think of it as judgment, a punishment for disbelief, idolatry, or arrogance. But the Book of Enoch, alongside the Quran and the Bible, hints at something even deeper. The flood was not just wrath, it was rescue. It was not just water, it was a reset button. The world in those days. The Nephilim walked openly, their feet crushing the soil, their hands grasping for power. Men trembled before them. Women were forced into their arms. Fields lay barren because giants consumed all. Blood stained the ground because humanity itself became prey. The very DNA of humanity was tainted. The hybrids of angel and man, or as Islam suggests, jinn and man, threatened to erase the purity of Adam's children. If left unchecked, there would be no uncorrupted lineage left to carry the covenant of God. This is why the flood had to come, not merely to drown sin, but to cleanse humanity itself. The Book of Enoch records that Idris the prophet saw it before it happened. In a dream, he foresaw the waters rising, the earth breaking, the heavens weeping. He lifted his hands and cried, "O Allah, preserve a righteous generation. Do not let corruption consume every child of Adam. Do not let your image vanish from the earth." And the answer came, not through Idris himself, but through another Noah. In both the Bible and the Quran, Noah becomes the chosen captain of survival. In Genesis, God warns him, "I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them." In the Quran, Surah Hud Noah is told, "Construct the ark under our eyes and our inspiration, and do not address me concerning the wrongdoers. Indeed, they are to be drowned." But when you read Enoch alongside these texts, the flood becomes more than punishment. It becomes surgical. It is not only the wicked who are erased, it is the hybrids, the corrupted flesh, the unnatural offspring. The Nephilim had to be swept away so that the line of Adam could remain intact. The flood was not just water, it was a genetic cleansing. Now picture the ark, not a boat of fantasy, but a vessel of preservation. Within its walls were not only Noah and his family, but the untainted seed of humanity. Within it were animals chosen not for curiosity, but for continuity. Every plank of wood, every nail, every seam was not only survival, it was resistance. Outside, the giants roared. The rain fell. The fountains of the deep split open. The waters rose higher than mountains. Cities vanished. Monuments drowned. And the voices of the Nephilim, once mighty, were silenced beneath waves. The cries of the corrupted were gone. The laughter of the rebels ended. And for the first time in generations, the earth was quiet. The flood was mercy, but it was also terror. For it revealed how far humanity can fall and how much it takes to restore. In the Hadith literature, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, confirms that Noah was sent to a people immersed in idolatry and corruption. Some traditions suggest that their sins included not only worshiping false gods, but indulging in unnatural unions. The Quran tells us that Noah preached for 950 years, warning them, pleading with them, calling them back to purity. But they mocked him. They called him mad. They laughed at his ark. Until the rain fell. They had never seen rain before. The world of Noah was watered by mists rising from the ground, not storms descending from the sky. When the first drops fell, it was not relief, it was terror. The very heavens turned against them, and as the ark lifted, the ground beneath their feet dissolved. The mighty who thought themselves gods clutched at mountains that crumbled. The Nephilim who devoured humanity now drowned with the animals they once hunted. The giants who towered over men could not tower over water. But the flood was not just destruction. It was a divine reset, a new beginning. The world that emerged after the waters receded was not the same world that had been drowned. It was a world in which giants no longer ruled. It was a world in which corruption was thinned. It was a world preserved for covenant. That covenant passed from Adam to Enoch, from Enoch to Noah, from Noah to Abraham, and ultimately to Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. Without the flood, that chain might have been broken. Without the flood, humanity might have become something less than human. The flood waters may not rise around us, but the same corruption threatens. Not through Nephilim, but through ideologies. Not through giants, but through technologies. Once again, humanity tinkers with its DNA, alters its boundaries, and toys with creation. Are we building a new generation of Nephilim, not of flesh, but of code, not of giants, but of machines? If so, then the lesson of the flood is more urgent than ever. For God will not let corruption consume creation forever. There will always come a reset. In Ethiopia, where the Book of Enoch survived the flood, is remembered not only as judgment, but as protection. In Islam, Noah is not just a prophet of doom, but a prophet of endurance, a man who never gave up hope, who built an ark while the world mocked him. And Idris, who foresaw it, becomes the prophetic witness, the one who prayed for a righteous remnant. Without his intercession, without his vision, perhaps Noah's ark would never have been commanded. Idris saw the danger. Noah carried out the rescue. Together they preserved humanity. Corruption rises. Prophets warn. The world mocks. Judgment falls. And a remnant is preserved. Over and over, from the flood to today, the cycle repeats. The question is not whether it will happen again. The question is whether we will listen before the waters rise. So when you think of the flood, do not think of it only as water. Think of it as fire put out by water. Think of it as corruption purged by creation itself. Think of it as God pressing reset on the story of humanity, wiping the slate so that the covenant could survive. The flood was not just water, it was a reset button. But even as Noah sailed on the waters and the giants drowned beneath the waves, one question remained. What of Idris himself? The man who foresaw it, the prophet who prayed for cleansing. Where did he go? Did he die before the waters rose, or did he ascend beyond them, lifted to a station no storm could touch? The traditions whisper Idris did not simply vanish. He was raised. He was preserved. And his story did not end with the flood. The age of giants may have ended, but the age of prophets had only begun. And Idris Enoch still had one more encounter that would change everything. The angel of death was coming. Chapter 6. Giants of the ancient world. The waters of the flood receded. The ark came to rest. Humanity was preserved. But the memory of giants did not vanish so easily. Whispers of their size, their strength, and their arrogance echoed down through generations. And when the ancient prophets spoke, they did not only describe spiritual greatness, they described bodies of staggering scale. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave us one of the most astonishing glimpses into this forgotten truth. In Sahih al-Bukhari, he declared Allah created Adam and his height was 60 cubits. 60 cubits, about 131 feet tall. The very first human being was not the size of an ordinary man. He was a colossus, a being whose head would have brushed the tops of palm trees, whose stride would have crossed rivers, whose voice would have thundered across valleys. And Adam was not myth. He was the father of humanity. If he stood at 131 feet tall, then what of his children? Idris Enoch lived only 6 generations after Adam. That means he walked in an age when the memory of colossal humanity was still alive. He prayed beneath stars that Adam himself had seen with eyes looking down from a height no man today can imagine. The early prophets were not only giants in spirit, they were giants in form. Skeptics laugh at this idea, they say it is impossible. And yet the bones of massive human-like skeletons have been claimed throughout history, unearthed only to vanish into museum basements. Myths of titans, ogres, and colossal kings linger in every culture, from the Anakim of Canaan to the Titans of Greece to the Jotun of Norse legend. Could it be that all these cultures were remembering fragments of one reality? And what of the people of Ad, a nation remembered in the Quran itself? Surah al-Fajr speaks of them. Have you not considered how your Lord dealt with Ad-Iram of the pillars, the likes of whom had never been created in the land? Quran 89, 6-8. Iram of the pillars, a city of towering architecture, a people unmatched in strength. The Quran says their power was unrivaled, their pride overwhelming. They carved homes into mountains, built monuments that defied time, and declared, "Who is stronger than us in might?" The people of Ad mocked the warnings of their prophet Hud. They laughed at the idea of divine punishment. They believed their size, their might, their pillars would stand forever, until the wind came. The Quran tells us, "So we unleashed upon them a screaming wind for 7 nights and 8 days in succession, so that you would see the people lying dead as though they were hollow trunks of palm trees." Quran 69, 6-7. Giants who thought themselves invincible reduced to corpses scattered like broken wood. Their arrogance shattered, their monuments buried beneath sand, their memory preserved only as a warning. The people of Ad were not allegory, they were history. A nation of giants destroyed because their pride was greater than their strength. Adam a colossus, Idris walking in an age of giants. The people of Ad unmatched in might. Over and over, the early world was filled with beings whose stature dwarfed our own. This is not the world we know today. Humanity has diminished. Our bodies are smaller, our lives shorter, our strength weaker. But in those early days, the scale of creation was different. And that changes everything we think we know about the ancient world. The megaliths, the stones of Baalbek in Lebanon, some weighing over 1,000 tons, too heavy, even for modern cranes. Think of the pyramids aligned with the stars, built with precision beyond comprehension. Think of the massive tombs, the colossal doorways, the ruins of cities designed for beings far larger than us. Were these monuments built for men of our size, or for giants who walked before us, and Idris lived among them? He was not a prophet in an age of weakness, but a prophet in an age when humanity itself towered over creation. His very life was a testimony that greatness is not found in size alone. For while the giants of Ad perished in pride, Idris was preserved in humility. Giants with stone pillars collapsed. But Idris, the humble scribe, the tailor whispering Subhanallah with every stitch, was raised to a station higher than any earthly monument. The story of giants is not only about size, it is about the danger of pride. Adam was great in height, but fell through temptation. The people of Ad were great in might, but fell through arrogance. The Nephilim were great in power, but drowned in corruption. Only those who walked humbly with God were truly raised. And this brings us back to the Hadith. When the Prophet Muhammad said Adam was 60 cubits tall, he was not giving us trivia. He was reminding us that humanity began in greatness, that we have diminished over time not only in form but in spirit, that our destiny is not to boast of what we are but to remember what we were meant to be. And in that remembrance lies both a warning and a promise. Size, power, and pride cannot save us. The greatest nations of giants fell, and so can we. The promise is this: just as God preserved Idris, so too can he raise us to a high station, not by our might, but by our faith. The first prophets were giants not only in spirit, but in form. If Adam was a giant, if Idris lived in an age of colossal men, if the people of Ad were destroyed by pride, what does this mean for us today? Are giants gone forever? Or do their shadows still linger in myths and ruins and whispers of the earth? And if giants fell by pride, then what lesson must we learn before history repeats itself? For the story does not end here. After the giants came another chapter, a story stranger still. A prophet walked so closely with God that even the angel of death himself came not to claim him, but to befriend him. And that story will leave you breathless. Chapter 7. Idris and the Angel of Death. Until now we have seen him as the scholar, the tailor, the astronomer, the prophet raised to a high station. But now we enter the moment where his story surpasses even the boundaries of life and death. This is the tale of Idris and Azrael, the Angel of Death. According to Islamic tradition, Idris's devotion was so pure, so unbroken, that even the angels themselves admired him. While the watchers descended for corruption, Idris ascended through righteousness. His prayers echoed in the heavens. His worship became a fragrance that even the angels breathed with joy. And among those angels was Azrael, the appointed messenger of death. His role was not companionship. His command was to take souls, to sever the thread between body and spirit. Yet when Azrael gazed upon Idris, something stirred within him: admiration, even love for the sake of Allah. So he descended, not to take, not to judge, but simply to walk beside him. Idris is fasting, whispering praises as he threads a garment. Suddenly a stranger approaches, tall, radiant, cloaked in human form. They walk together. They pray together. They share silence beneath the stars. For days, Idris feels a presence he cannot name. And then curiosity overcomes him. "Tell me the truth," Idris asks gently. "You are not from the children of Adam, are you?" The stranger smiles. And with that smile, the world changes. "I am Azrael, the Angel of Death." A chill runs through Idris. His hands tremble, his breath stills. But Azrael quickly assures him, "I have not come to take your soul. I have come because I love you for the sake of Allah." Idris makes a bold request, a request no man had ever dared ask before. "Then let me taste death," Idris said only once. With Allah's permission, Azrael obeys. He takes Idris's soul gently, not in terror, but in reverence. Idris feels the world slip away. He enters the silence beyond life. He experiences the weight, the dread, the severing of existence. He tastes death. But unlike every other human being, Idris does not remain in that state. With Allah's command, Azrael returns his soul. Idris breathes again. He rises. But he does not rise back to the earth. He rises to the heavens. Idris is carried across the boundary that no mortal crosses. He walks in realms reserved for angels. He beholds the unseen. He asks to see hell, and Allah permits it. Flames that roar like oceans, faces twisted in eternal regret, chains heavier than mountains. Idris faints at the horror, for the reality of divine wrath is too much even for a prophet. But then he asks to see paradise, and there his heart finds peace. He enters gardens beneath which rivers flow. He tastes fruits sweeter than any harvest of earth. He drinks from waters clearer than crystal. He feels a breeze that soothes his soul. He walks beneath trees whose shade covers horizons. He hears songs of peace that echo from the lips of angels. And in that moment, Idris makes a decision that changes his destiny forever. When Azrael approaches and says, "It is time to leave," Idris clings to a tree and replies, "I will not leave paradise." Azrael is stunned. No human has ever spoken such words. The angel of death, who has severed billions of souls, now stands speechless before a prophet clinging to the trees of eternity. "Idris," he says, "this is not your time. You must return." But Idris looks at him with calm resolve. "Every soul shall taste death. I have tasted it, and whoever enters paradise shall not be removed. I am here already. Why should I leave?" Idris is brought before his Lord, and he lays his case with humility and truth. "My Lord," Idris says, "your decree is clear. Every soul shall taste death, and I have. You have promised that none shall be removed from paradise once they enter, and I am here. I speak only what is true. Your word is truth. Leave me here, O Lord, for I am content." And Allah the Most High affirms him, "My servant Idris has spoken the truth. O Azrael, leave him. He shall never exit paradise again." And so it was written. Idris Enoch became the prophet who not only walked with God, but who entered paradise alive, never to return. All men fear death. All men avoid its shadow. Yet Idris walked toward it. He tasted it. He overcame it. And when the door of eternity opened, he refused to leave. "I will not leave paradise." And God himself replied, "Then stay." It is the turning point that separates him from every other prophet. Noah survived the flood. Moses split the sea. Jesus healed the blind. Muhammad ascended on the night journey. But Idris alone tasted death, entered paradise, and remained there. His story is not just history, it is blueprint. A divine signal that closeness to God can lift man beyond the chains of mortality. That devotion can transform death from a terror into a doorway. That one day, for those who walk with truth, the words spoken to Idris may be spoken to us. Then stay. Idris's presence in paradise is not only a reward, it is a sign. For when the Prophet Muhammad ascended in the Miraj, he met Idris in the heavens. Idris was there alive, preserved. Centuries after his earthly life, he was still part of the unseen, a living prophet in eternity. This means his witness is not finished. His voice still echoes. His story still matters. The Watchers descended and were bound in chains. The Nephilim rose in arrogance and drowned in the flood. The people of Ad boasted in their strength and were shattered by the wind. But Idris, the humble scribe, the scholar, the tailor who whispered praises with every stitch, outlived them all. He walked through death. He entered paradise. And he stayed. True power is not in strength, nor in knowledge stolen, nor in monuments of stone. True power is in devotion, in sincerity, in truth before God. And so the story of Idris and the angel of death becomes the climax of a greater revelation. A revelation that dares to ask, what if the goal of life is not to delay death, but to transcend it? What if the purpose of faith is not to survive history, but to walk so closely with God that even death becomes powerless? This is why Idris matters, not just to Jews, not just to Christians, not just to Muslims, but to anyone who seeks the mystery of life and eternity. For Idris's story is not only personal, it is cosmic. His presence in paradise becomes a bridge to the next great question. If Idris was preserved, if the giants were destroyed, if the jinn were bound, then what is the meaning of these forbidden scriptures preserved in Ethiopia? Idris's eternal presence is the key that unlocks the mystery of the banned books, the hidden texts, and the African legacy that preserved them when Rome tried to erase them. The prophet who said, "I will not leave paradise now," calls us to enter the next chapter, a chapter not about death but about revelation that empires could not silence. Chapter 8. The Black Prophet's Message. The story of Idris Enoch does not end with his ascent into paradise. His presence beyond death is not just a personal triumph. It is a message that reverberates across centuries, across scriptures, across cultures. Because Idris was not a myth, he was not an allegory, he was real. And his life is not just a memory, it is a mirror. When we look at Idris, we are not only gazing into the distant past, we are gazing into a divine blueprint for what it means to live righteously in a world drowning in corruption. He lived in an age of giants, yet he showed that greatness is not measured by stature. He lived in a world flooded by violence, yet he showed that strength is not measured by conquest. He lived in an era of forbidden knowledge, yet he showed that wisdom is not measured by secrets stolen from heaven, but by obedience to the God of heaven. Idris is not merely history, he is instruction. He is not just a prophet, he is a mirror for us today. Something that empires have tried to erase but Ethiopia preserved and the Quran confirmed. Idris was not a pale European sage. He was not a prophet sculpted in marble by Renaissance hands. Idris, like Moses, like Solomon, like Jesus, in his earliest depictions was a man of Africa and the Middle East. He was black. The Book of Enoch survived not in Rome but in Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, one of the oldest branches of Christianity, preserved it in Ge'ez, their sacred African tongue. And Idris, known in Islam as a prophet, is tied not to the empires of Europe, but to the lineage of prophets in the East. Because the erasure of Africa from the biblical story is one of the greatest acts of cultural theft in history. And Idris stands as a towering reminder that the roots of faith are not European imports, they are African origins. When Idris stitched the first garments, he stitched them with black hands. When he wrote the first words with a pen, he wrote them as a black prophet. When he studied the stars, when he prayed, when he walked with angels, he did so not as a figure from Western imagination, but as a son of the soil that gave rise to the world's first civilizations. This is central, because empires have always tried to shape prophets into their own image. But Idris refuses. His story is preserved in the African canon. His name is honored in the Quran. His memory belongs not to empire but to truth. To live like Idris is to resist corruption, to stand against false gods even when the whole world bows, to walk in humility while others walk in arrogance, to cling to truth when deception is dressed as light. Idris was not simply a prophet. He was resistance incarnate. He was truth embodied. The courage of Idris. He lived in a time when giants devoured humanity. He lived in a world when jinn whispered and watchers deceived. He lived in a society collapsing under violence and pride, and yet he did not compromise. He did not chase forbidden power. He did not bow to corruption. He walked with God step by step, breath by breath. This is why Azrael admired him. This is why Allah raised him. This is why he remains a blueprint for us today. Now bring this into the present. We live in a world not of giants but of empires. not of Nephilim, but of systems of greed, not of watchers descending, but of ideologies that enslave. And the temptation is the same, to bow to compromise, to trade truth for survival. But Idris teaches us otherwise. He shows us that faith is not about surviving corruption, but about refusing it. Faith is not about being the strongest, but about being the truest. Faith is not about conquest, but about obedience. His life is proof that righteousness is resistance, that devotion is rebellion against corruption, that walking with God is the most radical act a human being can commit. Idris was not just a prophet, he was a mirror for us today. Will you walk with God while the world bows to giants? Will you whisper his name while others chase forbidden knowledge? Will you resist the corruption of power even if it cost you everything? Because Idris already showed us the way, the symbolism of his crafts. He was the first to sow. Do you see the beauty of this? While others tore apart creation, Idris stitched it together. While others corrupted flesh, Idris clothed it with dignity. While others misused the stars, Idris studied them for divine order. His very actions were prophetic metaphors. He repaired, he preserved, he honored. And in a world unraveling today, the message is the same: be like Idris. Stitch what is torn, preserve what is true. Study not to exploit, but to worship. But beyond his actions lies his identity. Idris was black. And this matters because the story of faith has too often been whitewashed, stripped of its roots, sanitized by empire. To remember Idris as he was is to reclaim a stolen heritage. To remember that Africa was not a footnote but the foundation. To remember that Ethiopia preserved what Rome tried to erase. And this is more than cultural pride. It is spiritual truth. Because when the prophets are erased from their roots, their message is diluted. But when they are restored to who they truly were, their message regains its fire. The life of Idris burns with that fire. His story thunders with that truth. He lived as resistance. He rose as testimony. He remains as blueprint. And his message is not buried in dusty scrolls. It is alive. It is urgent. It is now. So what do we do with this? We listen. We learn. We mirror him. We walk as he walked, with truth in our steps, humility in our hands, and devotion in our hearts. Because Idris was not a myth. He was not a symbol. He was not a story to be whitewashed or forgotten. He was a black prophet, a scholar, a mystic, a man who defied corruption and entered paradise alive. Resist corruption, walk humbly, cling to God, and do not be deceived by the false light of power. He was not just a prophet, he was a mirror for us today. And as we close this chapter, we prepare for the next. For if Idris's message is blueprint, then where has it been preserved? Where do his words still live? The answer takes us to the highlands of Ethiopia, to a Bible unlike any other, where Idris's writings still echo. Chapter 9. The Ethiopian Bible and Africa's Witness. If Idris's message is blueprint, then the question follows, where was it preserved? If empires buried his writings, who dared to keep them alive? The answer lies not in Rome, not in Europe, not in the councils of emperors and bishops, but in Africa. In the highlands of Ethiopia, carved into mountains and hidden in monasteries, lies a Bible unlike any other, the Ethiopian Bible. Most Christians today are familiar with 66 books, Genesis to Revelation, neat, complete, leather-bound. But the Ethiopian Bible holds 88 books, 22 more than the Western canon. Books that Europe called dangerous, apocryphal, even heretical. Books that Ethiopia guarded like fire in the night. And among them are the writings of Enoch. Yes, the very Book of Enoch that the Vatican buried, that councils dismissed, that kings rejected. In Ethiopia, it was never silenced. Alongside it stand the Book of Jubilees, the third and fourth books of Maccabees, the Ascension of Isaiah, and the Apocalypse of Peter, texts that stretch the boundaries of revelation, offering visions too raw, too apocalyptic, too bold for empire to control. Why would Europe ban these books? Why would Rome trim the canon so tightly? Why did they decide 66 was enough when Ethiopia still held 88? The answer is not about truth being false. It is about truth being dangerous. The Book of Enoch spoke of angels who fell of forbidden knowledge of judgment upon corrupt rulers. The Book of Jubilees offered a heavenly calendar that defied imperial time. The Maccabean books preserved stories of resistance and revolution inconvenient for empires seeking submission. The Apocalypse of Peter gave terrifying visions of hell and hope for the oppressed. The Ascension of Isaiah unveiled glimpses of Christ before Rome could dictate the shape of Christendom. These were not lies. They were too true, too disruptive, too powerful. So empire silenced, but Ethiopia preserved. While empires silenced, Ethiopia preserved. For centuries, while Europe burned scrolls, Ethiopia translated them into Ge'ez, their sacred African tongue. While kings crowned themselves with authority, Ethiopian monks inked manuscripts by candlelight. While cathedrals were built on doctrine, churches carved into stone in Lalibela carried the living witness of the forgotten books. Ethiopia became a living ark, a refuge for scriptures the world tried to erase. Christianity was not imported into Africa by European missionaries. It was not a colonial gift wrapped in crosses and conquest. Christianity took root in Africa from the beginning. The Ethiopian kingdom embraced the gospel as early as the 4th century during the reign of the Aksumite Empire, long before Europe even stabilized after Rome's collapse. While emperors in Europe were still debating doctrine, Ethiopia had already translated scripture into its native tongue, already built cathedrals carved from mountains, already stood as one of the first Christian nations on earth. Ethiopia did not borrow Christianity. Ethiopia was Christianity. While the Western Church pruned the canon, Ethiopia expanded it. While Europe claimed ownership of Christian history, Ethiopia safeguarded the parts they could not control. While colonial powers later painted Christianity as Western, the truth is that Africa held the longer, fuller, unfiltered story all along. When you open the Ethiopian Bible, you do not just see familiar names, Moses, David, Jesus. You see the forbidden names too, Enoch, whose visions shook heaven and earth; Isaiah, whose ascension unveils Christ in glory; Peter, whose apocalypse reveals a heaven and hell more vivid than Dante ever imagined. This is not extra fluff. This is a fuller picture. What kind of faith emerges when it is shaped not by empire but by resistance, when it is not trimmed by councils but preserved by scribes, when its witness is not Roman but African? The Ethiopian Bible gives us the answer. It is a faith raw, mystical, uncolonized. A Christianity that remembers its prophets were not pale but rooted in Africa and the Middle East. A Christianity that honors Idris the Black Prophet not as myth, but as ancestor. The preservation of Enoch in Ethiopia is not coincidence, it is testimony. Because Idris himself was resistance, and his writings could only survive in a land that embodied resistance. For centuries, Ethiopia defied empire. It resisted Islamic conquest. It resisted European colonization. It resisted doctrinal erasure. And in its resistance, it became a guardian of memory. Think of the Ark of the Covenant, which Ethiopian tradition claims still rests in Aksum. Think of the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, hidden from invaders yet echoing with chants of Ge'ez. Think of monks walking barefoot over mountains carrying manuscripts that held words the rest of the world had forgotten. This is not just history. This is witness. Africa's witness. Without Ethiopia, we might never know the full story of Enoch. Without Africa's witness, Idris would remain a whisper buried under centuries of suppression. Without the Ethiopian Bible, the banned books would still be lost. So what does this mean? It means the survival of these texts is no accident. It is divine design. For in every age God ensures that truth cannot be fully erased. When empire silences, a remnant preserves. When kings rewrite history, prophets rise from the forgotten. And in this case, that remnant was Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Bible is not just a longer canon, it is a living challenge. It asks us, do you believe truth is only what Rome approved? Or do you believe truth survives in the margins, in the mountains, in the hands of those empires tried to silence? Will you accept a Christianity carved by empire? Or will you seek the witness preserved in Africa's soil? Because to reclaim Enoch, to read Jubilees, to hear the apocalypse of Peter, is not just to expand our library, it is to expand our faith. To see that God's story is bigger than the canon Rome left us. To remember that Africa was not an afterthought but a foundation. To honor the truth that what is banned by men may be preserved by God, while empires silenced, Ethiopia preserved. And so the story of Idris continues. His writings live in the Ethiopian canon. His message survives in the chants of monks and the prayers of churches carved from stone in the hidden manuscripts that refuse to die. His witness, like Ethiopia itself, stands as proof that no empire can bury truth forever. If Idris was preserved in paradise and his writings were preserved in Ethiopia, then what do these forbidden scriptures actually reveal? What warnings, what visions, what prophecies did empires fear so much that they tried to erase them? For in the Book of Enoch lies a vision so terrifying, so apocalyptic, that it still speaks to our age. A vision of watchers bound, of giants destroyed, of judgment descending, and of the Lord returning with 10,000s of his saints. The forbidden scriptures are not just history, they are prophecy. Chapter 10, a warning and a choice. Enoch's story is not just a tale of the past. It is not a myth carved in forgotten scrolls or a legend whispered in ancient tongues. It is a living testimony. He was the prophet who saw three worlds: the corruption of the watchers, the cleansing of the flood, and the glory of paradise. Enoch was a witness of the fall, a witness of the judgment, and a witness of eternity. And what he saw was not only for his generation, he saw for ours. The Book of Enoch is filled with visions of angelic rebellion, of forbidden knowledge, unleashed of humanity corrupted beyond recognition. He saw giants walk the earth violent and unrestrained. He saw mankind seduced by secrets of heaven, not meant for their hands: sorcery, weaponry, enchantments, astrology, the manipulation of creation itself. And he saw God's judgment fall like a flood. His warnings were not sealed in the ancient world. They leap across time, pointing straight into our age. Humanity today is once again chasing the forbidden. We unravel DNA, rewriting the code of life. We manipulate the heavens with machines that pierce the sky. We craft weapons with power to annihilate millions in a breath. We reach into realms of artificial intelligence and technologies that blur the line between man and machine. The Watchers taught forbidden knowledge once. We are resurrecting it again. The Nephilim declared themselves invincible. The people of Ad cried, "Who is stronger than us?" Today nations boast of armies, economies, technologies. We build towers not of stone but of silicon and steel. And once again pride blinds us to truth. Enoch saw it all before. He warned that when mankind reaches too far, when arrogance crosses the boundary, when knowledge is used without wisdom, judgment follows. The flood was not only water, it was reset. It was divine mercy cutting corruption before it consumed creation entirely. Are we walking toward another reset? This is not alarmism, it is reflection. Look at our world wars erupting, systems collapsing, corruption, normalized morality, mocked. Like the days of Noah, violence fills the earth. Like the days of Enoch, knowledge is exploding faster than wisdom. Like the people of Ad, pride has become our creed. We are living on the edge of the same story. And this is why Enoch matters now more than ever. His life was not preserved for curiosity. It was preserved for decision. Because in the end, his message comes down to one question. Will you walk with God like Enoch, or will you follow the fallen? That is the line drawn across history. That is the choice every generation must face. Enoch walked with God step by step while the world drowned in corruption. He resisted forbidden knowledge. He resisted arrogance. He resisted despair. And because he walked faithfully, God raised him to a high station, lifted him into paradise, and preserved his witness for eternity. The fallen, whether watchers or Nephilim or arrogant nations, drowned in their pride. The choice is the same now. The Book of Enoch is not just banned history, it is a prophecy for our future. Do you feel the weight of that? It is not only a record of what was, but a warning of what will be if we repeat the same sins. Empires silenced it because it was too dangerous. Ethiopia preserved it because it was too true. And now it returns in our age like a voice crying out from the wilderness. Choose. Will you walk in humility or in arrogance? Will you seek wisdom or chase forbidden power? Will you honor the Creator or exalt yourself above creation? These are not abstract questions. They are the difference between preservation and destruction, between judgment and salvation. Look again at Idris at Enoch. He was not a figure lost in myth. He was a black prophet, a scholar, a tailor, a mystic, a man of resistance. His life is blueprint. His ascent is testimony. His presence in paradise is proof that God rewards those who walk with him. His story is not just about the past, it is about the path. And that path is laid before us now. How it all connects. The giants who fell by pride. The flood that reset humanity. The people of Ad who crumbled in arrogance. The forbidden books hidden in Ethiopia. The prophet Idris raised to a high station. Each thread converges into a single fabric, a warning and a choice. If you see these patterns, you cannot dismiss them as coincidence. History repeats, the warnings return, and the question remains, which side of history will you stand on? This is not only about personal salvation, it is about collective destiny. The Book of Enoch does not merely whisper of individuals, but of nations. It declares judgment on rulers who oppress, on kings who exploit, on societies that abandon righteousness for pride. And if we are honest, our world today bears every resemblance to the world Enoch condemned. But here is the hope. The same God who preserved Idris, who rescued Noah, who lifted the humble, is still watching. Judgment is real, but so is mercy. Wrath is certain, but so is refuge. And the blueprint is before us: walk with God. Resist corruption. Stand in truth. The Book of Enoch is not just a relic. It is not an apocryphal curiosity. It is prophecy. It is the voice of a prophet who walked with God so closely that he crossed into eternity alive. It is a mirror held to our generation, asking if we will learn or repeat. And that is where the story leaves us. Not with answers neatly tied, but with a choice burning before us. Will you be like the fallen watchers deceived by pride? Will you be like the Nephilim corrupted by power? Will you be like the people of Ad boasting until the wind carries you away? Or will you be like Idris the black prophet, the humble scribe, the man who walked with God until death itself surrendered? The choice is yours. The choice is now. Enoch's voice echoes, "Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment upon all, and to convict the ungodly of all their ungodly deeds." Judgment is not myth. Judgment is not past. Judgment is future. So the question is not, did Enoch exist? The question is, what will you do with his message? The forbidden is not always false. Sometimes the forbidden is the truest of all. And truth, no matter how deeply buried, always rises. The Book of Enoch has risen again. The warning has been spoken. The choice is before you. What path will you walk? The story of Idris Enoch leaves us with more than wonder. It leaves us with wisdom. His life was not preserved simply to entertain the curious, but to guide those who are still walking the road of faith. Enoch's world was filled with arrogance, violence, and the misuse of knowledge. Ours is no different. We live in an age of endless information where technology outpaces wisdom and pride often blinds us to truth. The warning is clear: knowledge without humility destroys, but humility with God preserves. True greatness is not in strength or power, but in faithfulness. He stitched garments while others built empires. He prayed while others pursued forbidden secrets. He walked quietly with God, and that walk carried him into eternity. Slow down, seek truth, and live simply but deeply. Resist the arrogance of the age. Protect the dignity of others. Cling to God in small acts, in prayer, in honesty, in kindness. Because eternity is not earned in one moment of glory, but in a lifetime of walking faithfully, step by step, as Enoch walked.